Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this morning, and I'll start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. Legal Aid Queensland acknowledges and respects the Turrbal and Yugara people as the First Nations custodians of the land where our office stands, and where we work to help marginalised Queenslanders uphold their legal rights in our justice system. We pay respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits. We recognise these lands have always been places of ceremony, teaching, research and learning. We acknowledge the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play in our community and in improving our legal system. And I'd also like to acknowledge and pay deep respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are joining us for the broadcast, the webinar today. And thank you for taking the time. Thanks everybody for taking the time to join us for this morning's webinar. So our theme is domestic and family violence, and this is one of the activities of Domestic Violence Month that Legal Aid has been organising. My name's Linda Richards. I'm the Community Legal Education Coordinator at Legal Aid Queensland, and I'm joined today by Lindy Hawkins-Guy, who is one of our lawyers in our Violence Prevention Women's Advocacy team.
Good morning, everyone.
And also Maria, who is a social worker with the Violence Prevention and Women's Advocacy team. So a very multidisciplinary team. So we're very fortunate to have Lindy and Maria co-presenting today. So we'll just move along with our presentation. Just a reminder, the webinar is for community legal education purposes, and we will be recording the presentation today and making that available via YouTube for everybody who is joining today, or if you've got staff or team members that would like to link in and see the presentation later. That's a good way to use that as a resource. Move that on. Just to remind everyone, if you're having any technical issues, hopefully you're not, I might just ask, can a few people raise their hands just so we know that you can see us and hear us. We're also very fortunate to have our Auslan interpreters here with us and live captioning, so that's, we're very grateful for the involvement of our interpreters to make this session accessible to everybody. So can I see any hands there? Okay, that looks okay. All right, so there will be you'll see in the handouts box there is a few handouts. We've got our handout of the presentation material today. We've also got our domestic violence resource, how to apply for domestic violence order guide. So that one is available on our Legal Aid Queensland website. And
there's also a counterpart that's just about to be published, which is very exciting. I don't know that that's been announced yet, but that will assist with respondents. So this document that you're holding up is to assist applicants.
Great, thanks Lindy. So we'll publish that on the website. It'll be available for everybody, which will be great. We'll be asking for questions. Feel free to type questions in the question box, and we will have time for questions towards the end. And I will run a quick poll just to help our presenters know who we've got. Well, we do know who we've got with us, but it's very interesting to see what parts of Queensland and sometimes Australia that we're reaching with our webinars. So I'll just run a quick poll and then I'll hand over to our presenters. I'll just launch that. Okay, so which region do you work in? Southeast Queensland, Far North Queensland, Regional Queensland, or outside of Queensland? So I'll just open that poll now. And I can see the responses coming in. Thanks, everyone. And I'll close that one off and share so that we can all see where everybody's. Can everybody see the polls there popped up? We've got 67% from South East Queensland, 9% from Far North Queensland, 18% people joining us today are from regional Queensland, and 7% outside of Queensland. And I think Maria was going to mention about the law around the jurisdictional elements around.
Yeah, I will just clarify as to this will be probably Queensland based, and some aspects of the presentation will be more Brisbane based as well, but we will mention when it comes.
Great, thanks very much, Maria. Well, thanks everybody for participating in the poll, and I'll now hand over to Maria, and she'll give a overview of the session today. So thanks very much.
I'm just going to open myself here. All right. Excellent. Okay. So thank you, Linda, for the introduction and assisting us with all of this. So what we will be talking about today is how you can connect clients with legal aid assistance, but particularly around domestic and family violence matters. So the majority of the topics that we will be discussing today will be Queensland based in terms of our legal aid processes and the legal jurisdictions. But each legal aid across Australia will have the respective legal processes and policies and access points. So please encourage your clients to access that local legal aid if you are connecting from a different state or territories. So we will be going through what you can see in the screen, the legal advice available from Legal Aid Queensland, how to access domestic and family violence help, duty lawyers, court assistance workers, and application assistance program. This, the court assistance workers and the application assistance program will be the one that I'm referring to be more Brisbane based, and we will explore that when it comes to that topic. Applying from legal aid and domestic and violence protection orders and applications. Okay. Ooh. So initially, the webinar was designed to be presented as part of the Domestic Violence Prevention Month, which is marked in May, but we had to move it just a two days outside May. But I wanted just to highlight the importance of the theme for this year, which is all of us together. So I think that this theme is very important because it reminds us that everyone in Queensland has the right to feel safe and be safe, especially in their homes. So all of us together as a community, as a support workers that support clients who come to our different avenues, have the role to assist them and facilitate support for them. So it's important to understand that, you know, in order to achieve lasting positive cultural changes in terms of domestic and family violence, all levels of the society need to come together to take action against domestic and family violence. And we can all be proud of the vital contribution of Legal Aid Queensland making towards this change. Additionally, important to mention is that this report that you can see on the screen is available, and it's available in the task force website, but this is quite important. This report here, her voice, was released in December last year in 2021 and made 89 recommendations. 84 of the recommendations were directed to the government, and 5 of them were to the Queensland Law Society and the Bar Association of Queensland. So Initially, in the month of May, on the 10th of May, the Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk has announced a historic overhaul of laws and practices to better protect Queensland women from domestic and family violence, but also to make perpetrators accountable for their actions. So the Queensland government is supportive of all the task force recommendations, and now they are working to implement them. But one of the important things to highlight out of this report is the aspect that to recognize that coercive control is a pattern of behavior perpetrated against a person to create fear and control. But it's also one of the leading causes and most common factors in intimate partner homicide. So it is very important that our systems respond appropriately to this unique form of abuse. And we need to change the focus on responding to a single incident of domestic violence rather than to a pattern of abuse that occurs over time. So if any of you is interested in seeking more information about this report and these recommendations, I recommend for you to explore them on your own time. Okay, so Legal Aid Queensland provides assistance across a whole range of legal areas, but today we will be focusing more in legal and non-legal client support available to around domestic and family violence matters. So there is a lot of information available in our website for you as a additional point of resource. But we also will be primarily focusing today in people who are experiencing or also using violence. So we will be just discussing that. The focus today will be to victims of domestic violence, but also people who are respondents in an incident of domestic and family violence can access legal aid, and they will be accordingly be provided with legal assistance. Okay. All right, another important resource that we have developed in Legal Aid Queensland is this flyer that you can see it on the screen. And as community awareness rises around the behaviors and attitudes that contribute to domestic and family violence, more people are reaching out to services, but we as workers and community members are learning more about how we can recognize domestic violence, safely respond, and then act to enhance that safety. So part of this awareness is also identifying risk factors and risk factors that might constitute a risk of a victim being killed or almost killed. And the factors that you can see are non-lethal strangulation, stalking, threats to kill, separation, actual or pending, intimate partner sexual violence, perpetrator access to weapons, victim isolation, pregnancy of new birth, perpetrator suicide threats and attempts, abuse of pets, escalation, and perpetrator misuse of drugs and alcohol. And also this flyer is also available on our website. Okay. So I thought I might bring some statistics for everyone to be aware of how the data and research has shown how common family and domestic family violence is in Australia. So 1 in 6 women have experienced physical or sexual violence or a current or previous partner since the age of 15. 1 in 6 women were physically or sexually abused before the age of 15. And obviously the statistics also shown that 1 in 16 Australian men have experienced at least one incident of violence from an intimate partner. So we can see the difference from the gender perspective. And also, on average, 1 woman in Australia a week is killed by a current or former partner. So Legal Aid Queensland is very committed to taking domestic and family violence seriously, and we work with all the clients who are experiencing and using violence, and we aim to enhance safety in all of our client work. Also, it's important to highlight that domestic violence is one of the leading causes of homelessness. This data has shown that 72,000 women who saw homelessness services due to family violence. That report is from 2016 and 2017. Okay. All right. Another important factor that I wanted to highlight in this presentation is that the data and research tell us that there are distinct gender patterns in the perpetration and the impact of domestic and family violence, and the majority of domestic and family violence is perpetrated by women against men. However, the gender lens is very important and helpful when assessing and identifying risk. In order to enhance the quality of domestic and family violence advocacy and support, it is important that we acknowledge which inequalities are considered beside gender. And that's how we come across to inequalities that are conceptualized and connected to violence. And we touch into vulnerable groups, as you can see it on the screen. For instance, children, young women, all the people with disability, we know that they are quite vulnerable, people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, members of the LGBTIQ+ community, people in rural and remote Australia, people from social economical disadvantaged areas, and Indigenous Australians. Sorry, I'm just trying to manage this. Okay, now Lindy.
So as Maria has mapped out for you, LAQ, Legal Aid Queensland, is that peak body in terms of taking domestic violence seriously and enhancing the safety of women and children in Queensland. And to this end, we developed this best practice framework, which was launched back in October of 2020. We developed that with the Queensland Law Society, and that will assist practitioners, both legal and non-legal, to approach these matters in the best possible way to enhance that safety. So just in summary, the framework provides for a number of principles, and you'll see those in the PowerPoint. Firstly, about improving your own understanding of the social science and the law, if it's applicable, in this area. So read the resources that we provide you with, and keep yourself informed if you're working in this area. If the stakes are high and people, the harm that can be done can be lethal in nature. So it's very important to remain informed and up to date, to take practical steps to really prioritise the safety, not only of your client or the person you're assisting, but also your own safety and that of other practitioners. We have a whole presentation in relation to this framework, so I'd encourage you to look at that. Facilitating, empowering those that we assist, promoting accountability of perpetrators of the violence, communicating in a respectful and appropriate way, respecting the diversity of those that we assist, and importantly, collaborating with other stakeholders in the area, legal with non-legal and vice versa, to bring about the best possible outcome for the users of this system.
Okay, so there are a number of access support options from Legal Aid in terms of domestic and family violence matters. So these 5 key ones that you can see on the screen are publicly available, and you can share them with your clients as well. So we will go one by one, just so you get an understanding of what is the best possible way that might suit your client. Okay. So the first one is the Legal Aid Contact Center. That's the number available there. So this is where all the phone queries for legal aid come through and are filled by our contact center workers. These workers assess the legal issues that the client is presented and the level of assistance that might be required by the client, and then allocate that client to the most relevant legal team for assistance. These triage workers, whilst they are very legally skilled in assessing these topics, they are not lawyers. They can't provide legal advice directly. So this option is better for clients who will be able to contact the center directly and being able to self-refer and explain their situation appropriately. Clients who may have multiple issues across the different areas might require also to contact this line to seek clarification as to what will be the best legal team that might better provide that support. Also, there are clients who might not even have an understanding of what will be the best course of action for the legal matters. So this first point will be ideal to clarify what will be the more pressing point for them and the most important avenue, and being able to clarify that for the client and link them appropriately.
So the second form of assistance that we wanted to let you know about is referral directly to the team that Maria and I work in. So the Violence Prevention Women's Advocacy team, we have a direct phone number, so you'll see that on your screens. And our own litigation support officers can do that triage. So clients need not come through the call centre, they can come directly to us. So our workers will do that triage. They will refer clients to our SharePoint legal advice list, and a lawyer is rostered on every day of the week to do those legal advice calls. So clients don't have to wait long. They can self-refer. So if that suits the client that you're assisting, that's the appropriate referral. And this is about one-off legal advice. It might be about commencing proceedings or taking a further step in domestic violence proceedings. Clearly, domestic violence is the main presenting feature, and this advice can also relate to other matters. So there's that aspect of complexity. It may be in relation to family law matters or child protection matters, but the main presenting feature will be domestic and family violence issues. Next, clients can come to us through the Judy Lawyer service, and you'll see the link there on your screen about connecting with the Legal Aid website, so you can obtain a little more information about that service. But the service is essentially for clients who are appearing at court on the first return date. So this system was set up arising out of the first report, the Not Now, Not Ever report, way back when. The service has been in place for some time now, 2015, and the level of assistance that's available will depend on the model that's in place at that particular court, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We can advise on matters before the court that day and represent the client on that day. No prior referral is needed, so the client just needs to turn up at court on the day and we will assist them. Really important to remember, if you're referring clients to that service, to bring their paperwork with them. And it's easily overlooked, but it has an enormous impact on the day of court. And Maria can confirm that there's often clients lined up at the registry requesting further copies of their documents because they've left them at home, they've left them in the car, etc. It's very difficult, impossible in fact, for a lawyer to give firm advice about anything unless they can see the paperwork, the documents that relate to the issue. So that's important. And in terms of why you would be using this option, if you have a domestic violence mention in court that day and the client requires advice, this would be the option for your client. Not every client does require advice and assistance from Judy, of course, but we're there to help if we need it. Next is the application assist program.
So this program I have to highlight is Brisbane based. So this program is aimed to support women who are wanting to complete a domestic violence application or an application to vary a protection order. So we are only able to offer this assistance to women who are filing at the Brisbane Magistrate Courts. So be mindful of that. For other magistrate courts, there might be regional domestic violence services or community legal services who might be able to provide this assistance. So please encourage your clients to access the local services and provide information about where to find that information if possible. So this program is run by the domestic violence prevention workers. We are based in the Brisbane Magistrate Courts on Level 6, Mondays and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. No appointment is required, it's a drop-in services. So please keep this in mind if you are referring a client or advising a client to coming into the service. We will probably appreciate a call beforehand if the client is coming, so the client can also have an understanding of what to expect in court, and maybe we can work cooperatively to assist the client in preparation before they come to see us.
Maria, what about if the client requires an interpreter?
We can organize interpreter on the spot through Teams. It will be a telephone interpreter, but if the client requires an interpreter, it might be better to apply for grant of aid.
Sure.
Because we are unable to do drafting. Drafting is a legal document, so we are only able to provide assistance to the woman in navigating the form, in what is the important information to be captured in the form, the recent incidents, and navigate that with them, but we are not able to draft a document. So if the client requires an interpreter and probably requires more legal assistance in putting the document together, it will be highly encouraged to call Legal Aid Queensland, apply for aid, and then a lawyer will be allocated
unless
to provide
there's
that support. Unless there is urgency, we can do our best to provide them on the spot, but just to be mindful to inform the clients about the scope of this service and this support. Of course, we will do our best to support the client in that way. So once again, depending on our capacity, we can provide, as you mentioned then, and the assistance. We can go through the filing out, assisting them with how to find them, showing them where to find the JP for signing the document. So we can do that, but it obviously based on the capacity that we may have on the day. So if the client can come more prepared of a little bit of a draft story of the recent incidents, that will be probably helpful for us to facilitate the process. If the client needs to start to tell us the story from the beginning, it might be more difficult. So if the client is already linked with a service, it will be helpful to facilitate that engagement and provide that heads up to the client, so we minimize victimization, and the client doesn't have to repeat the story to different services when there is already one service that might have had or captured that information
in
for
terms
her.
of our trauma.
Exactly, it's not very trauma informed.
And there are a number of services out in the sector that
Definitely.
are specifically funded for assisting with the preparation of applications.
So that's what, once again, to think about whether this program will be beneficial for your client. If it's not, then there are other services, contact Legal Aid directly, but this is more for clients who need that basic guidance of how to complete the form, navigate the form. The form can be quite confusing, what information is needed in each part of the form, and attachment of information if it's required. So that's why this presentation is aiming for you to think about what will be the best avenue and access point for your client to get support.
And we've got the link for that form, haven't we, in the presentation?
For the DV1
yes.
and DV4, yes, we do that. All right, let's see.
Back to me?
No. I'm just making sure I cover all the topics on that. Okay.
So, do you need to be camera hog?
The next program is the Court Assistance Service. Once again, this service is Brisbane based. This is for all women who are attending the Brisbane Magistrate Court for the domestic violence matters. We provide that either to aggrieved or respondents. So that's important to keep it in mind. And also we work alongside the violence prevention and women's advocacy team lawyers in the duty lawyer role on the day.
So it's a truly multidisciplinary approach to court. On the day of court, clients can be reassured that not only will they get that legal support, but they'll also get the social science assistance as well.
And importantly to mention is oftentimes women are unaware that that service is available. So I think this is an opportunity for us to put it into the community for you to use this service. So women who come to the service, to the courts, will be, they have the right to access legal advice, and we will be approaching them on the day to offer the support if they require. So what we do in this service is provide information, support and assistance to all the women, as I mentioned, whether they are the aggrieved of the respondents. And we support them through mentioned contested hearings and breaches. So we give information about the court, what to expect on the day. It's a difficult day for many clients. It's a lot of emotion, so it is very difficult to comprehend what is happening on the day. Oftentimes they have to wait there for the whole morning. So it's also important to mention, if they come to the court, advise them to bring some snacks, bring the phone charger or things like that. Be prepared to be waiting for quite some time. So on the day, we will be just working around expectation management and hopefully making the process a little bit easier and provide clarification when they need it. This is not a legal service. I just need to emphasize that. It's just a social support service. So in the interactions with the clients, we will do a brief risk assessment. We also will be discussing safety whilst they are in court and what the plans they have when they exit the court, whether they are linked with support services. We also can provide referrals to services when we assess that is needed and necessary. Some clients might need that extra support to be linking them with services, so we can facilitate referrals for the women who are attending to the courts and they are unaware of all the services available in the community. Also importantly to mention, there is a safe room available in the court where the women can wait safely. There is also a form available in the court's website, the safety form. This form can be completed for women who are experiencing high risk in attending the court matter. So they can just complete this form, and they can request early access to the building, taken to the safe room, or being escorted by security on the day. So those forms are available in the Queensland Court's website.
We can certainly send the link.
We can provide the link
after the webinar.
Yeah. Okay, so just to clarify for you to know, we are providing the support. If you are in need of linking a client or highlight that the client is attending the next day or whichever day to the court, feel free to send us an email or give us a call on the number provided on the screen, and we can definitely provide that support on the day while they are in court. So we facilitate that they are not going to be unsupported on the day at court. Okay.
So the next form of assistance that clients can access is an actual grant of legal aid. So this is different from the one-off or part type assistance that we've talked about thus far. If a client is in receipt of a grant of legal aid, they are allocated their own solicitor. So the solicitor will continue to act for them for the duration of the matter, and the matter will be case managed for them by that lawyer. To access that form of assistance, you need to complete the legal aid application form, and there's a link for that in the presentation, and that's via our website. And this would be an option for a client who, obviously if they're wanting to complete an application for a protection order and they've not been able to get through or navigate the process thus far. As Maria indicated, it might be too complex for the application assist program. There may not be services available in their local area that they've been able to access, and that they feel they need their own solicitor to assist them further with that application. Also, if they're on the receiving end of an application, if they're wanting to either cross-apply or they have a contested hearing coming up in the Magistrates Court and they need to comply with directions to prepare affidavit material or respond to affidavit material, that's something that can be quite onerous for clients to self-represent through that process, and legal aid grant may be appropriate in those circumstances. They may have a family law mediation that they require assistance with, or representation in the family courts. So if the other party has filed proceedings in the family court in relation to parenting matters, for example, then you would encourage the client to apply for legal aid in those circumstances. So we'll have a little bit more of a look at the Judy lawyer service. As I indicated previously, it began back in 2015, and I was very fortunate to be involved in the initial setup and training for those Judy lawyer services, initially in Southport, but now thankfully across the state, as you can see from the slide. And I also intimated earlier that there were two different types of models, or well, three in fact. The specialist model, and there's more funding available as a result of the announcement that was made that Maria discussed earlier on. We'll see more specialist courts throughout the state, which is great, because the benefits of having a specialised court are that you get a magistrate who has that specialised knowledge. You also get registry staff with that specialised knowledge, so that they're better across the issues, better able to enhance the safety of participants involved in this sector, in this area. and also the domestic violence duty lawyers that clients will encounter can provide a more fulsome service. So it's not just advice, it's also representation in that specialised court. Now, the enhanced model is very similar, but that we don't get the specialised court, so that you're still getting a Rolls-Royce service from the duty lawyers, but you may not get the same magistrate. They may be rotated, and you may get a magistrate who doesn't necessarily have that specialised knowledge in relation to domestic and family violence. So obviously we're very excited about the additional funding and the additional specialised courts that will be developed over the next period of time. So a little bit more about the role of the duty lawyers. Our role is also to explain the court process and the likely outcomes. For the court, it can be very stressful for clients who've not been to the court before, not knowing what to expect. And we'll also outline for them the options that are available for the respondent. So we may not have touched on this previously, but there's also a corresponding service available at the court for respondents. So they can also access legal advice, legal representation in the enhanced or specialised models. And they also have, not in every court, but social supports available to them in some courts, so that they also have that multidisciplinary support available at courts. And that assists the work that we do as well, because a respondent who is well informed and well supported is more likely to make appropriate choices on the day. So part of our role is to seek appropriate conditions to ensure the safety of the aggrieved and the children and any other named persons that might be in part of the household. We will advocate strongly to ensure that clients have a temporary protection order in place if it's not possible to finalise on the day. And it may be that that order is made on an ex parte basis, meaning that the respondent is not necessarily present or has not necessarily been served with the documents. We can still proceed with the matter in their absence at that initial stage. So it's good for your clients to be aware of that, even if they're not sure where the other party is at that point in time. That doesn't prevent the matter proceeding. We'll appear in court. We'll also make appropriate referrals, sometimes back to the support workers. Depending on how the matter has proceeded before the court, it may be necessary to link them back in with that service before they go home. And to a lesser degree, assisting them with completing an application for legal aid. At least we will bring that to their attention. We won't necessarily have time, depending on how busy the list is, to complete the form for them. Important though for you to know that if they have an application for legal aid, they will need to attach the supporting material, their court documents and their proof of income, so that that can be properly assessed by our grants division. And they're looking at two quite distinct tests in terms of eligibility. They're looking at means, so your client's financial circumstances, and our mission statement is to assist those persons in Queensland who are financially disadvantaged. So if you know that your client has 3 investment properties and $1 million in the bank, you're probably wasting their time and ours by referring them on to a legal aid application form. It may be best to directly refer them to a private solicitor if they do in fact require representation in this sector. I'll let you read through that at your leisure, but it's important to understand that there are those 2 separate tests. So they're also applying the merit test. is this a matter that would ordinarily be funded by a self-funding litigant? So would you spend your own money if you had your own money to support this litigation? And the reason that Legal Aid Queensland applies this merit test is because we are using taxpayers' dollars to provide funding for litigants. So we need to be not only a model litigant, but we also need to be responsible for the funds that are used for these grants. The really important aspect of the form, most of it is purely administrative, that clients can complete on their own or with a little bit of support from a worker. Yep. But question 18 is the really important part for, and that's your opportunity to really tell their story in a trauma-informed way so that the grants officer has all the information they need and you reduce the likelihood of requisitions issuing for more information or, heaven forbid, the application actually being refused, and then your client put in a position where they have to appeal the decision because you're of the view that they really do have merit. It's just the application process has gone awry. The other way of, I suppose, tackling this issue is to refer the client for legal advice. So part of that legal advice process is for us as lawyers to form a view about merit. And internally, we have checklists available to help us, help grants officers make that determination. So we can certify that we have advised a client and certify that we consider that they have merit to proceed with their case. It's no guarantee, but it may be that that is a quicker pathway for your client. It's not always appropriate and it's not always available, so it's good to know that there are these avenues, and that's why we've taken this opportunity to inform you about the different pathways into securing assistance, further assistance for your client. If your client is allocated a grant of legal aid, they'll have their own solicitor appointed. Now that might be an in-house legal practitioner like myself, or it might be a preferred supplier. And this is often the source of some confusion for clients because they're told that if legal aid is assisting one party, the other party can't access legal aid. That's actually not true. The other party won't be able to access an in-house practitioner to represent them because that obviously would be a conflict of interest that we can't, as a law firm, act for both parties, both sides in the dispute. But we can certainly, as a funding body, provide funding for a preferred supplier or a private practitioner who's approved to do legal aid work. We can do that. So always encourage your clients, if they're apparently eligible, to apply for legal aid.
Okay.
Moving on to orders.
Yes.
So let's have a look at child protection, beg your pardon, domestic violence.
So Lindy, we'll just say we've got about 10 minutes
10
left.
minutes
So we do our overview of the orders and then we'll check in if there's any questions.
No worries at all.
And we've certainly got a follow-up option as well.
So there's a few aspects in terms of the orders that there must be a relevant relationship. This is the first requirement legislatively. So if your client falls outside those definitions, if they're flatmates, for example, they're not going to be able to access these protection orders. There may be other remedies, other avenues for them, but this is not the right one. The court must be satisfied that there have been acts of domestic violence within that relevant relationship, and the order must be necessary and desirable looking into the future to protect that person in that relationship. Now, I did mention earlier on that we had the links to the forms. So the first form there is the application for a protection order. The second one is the variation application if your client is seeking to change a domestic violence order that's already been made by the court. It may be a temporary order that's already in place, or it may be a final order. Really important to understand that there are certain risks involved with any domestic violence proceedings. And first and foremost, clients are often unaware that the respondent will receive copies of their documents. So they need to not only be, they need to attest that the contents of the document is true and correct, but they also need to be aware that risk will often escalate.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they need to ensure that they're safe and secure whilst they're involved in this process. There is a form that they can use to keep their address confidential, and that's worth exploring with your client. When you're looking at the application process, important to assess whether or not your client needs legal advice before commencing. And I always use, or not always, but I sometimes refer to this analogy that if you're sick, if you need to have your tonsils removed, for example, you're not going to do that yourself. You're going to get a surgeon. Just the same with legal proceedings. If you're wanting to commence proceedings of any kind, it's always best to seek some legal advice first before commencing those proceedings to make sure that you satisfy those 3 legislative requirements. And also, as Maria said, the services available within the sector, the non-legal services, are not there to provide legal drafting. The form, whilst it is designed for people with no legal training to use, it's described as a user-friendly document. It's still
it is complicated to navigate.
In fact,
yeah.
it can be quite difficult. So access legal advice if you think that's appropriate. Complete the relevant form. Attach relevant documents. So that's something that's often overlooked too. If your client tells you that they have 10 text messages screen printed of threats that have been made, print them off. Assist the client in doing that and attach them to the application. Make sure it's been signed appropriately. A justice of the peace must do that. And then assist them if you can, facilitate the filing of the document. If they're filing in the morning, they can have a temporary ex parte order that afternoon. It really can be that quick. The police can then serve the order. If an ouster condition is put in place for the respondent to be removed from the family home, that can be done straight away. So you're really taking very practical steps to enhance the safety of your client and their children. And make sure they attend all court dates. If they can't attend, contact the court and provide an explanation. If it's illness, provide a medical certificate. Best to do that by email, because the court registries, particularly with non-specialist courts, are often overwhelmed with all sorts of inquiries. Domestic and family violence is only part of their core business, so best to email. Completing the form, I think we've already spoken a little bit about this. The statements of fact, it's probably good to go over this a little bit. Try and keep it to a minimum. I say 3, others have different points of view. Tell the court the what, the who, the when, if you can, and even if you don't know, it wasn't the 2nd of June 2022, around about Christmas time this incident happened, and how that made you feel. I cried, I couldn't sleep that night, I felt compelled to look out the window to see if his car was driving past for the next week. How it actually impacted you in a factual way. Avoid at all costs statements like, he always does this. He assaulted me. Assault is actually a legal definition. So tell the court actually what happened in factual terms rather than an interpretation or your assessment of what the client has told you. Consider named persons. Maybe Granny lives in a granny flat on the property and they've heard things, they've been exposed to threats, for example. They may need to be named. I've spoken about that, temporary orders, ex parte orders in the absence of the respondent. Consider with your client what conditions she requires to best protect her from the respondent moving forward. Don't ask for conditions if there's no evidence that those conditions are necessary or desirable. For example, if your client doesn't use social media and the respondent has not used social media to threaten her or publish photographs, don't ask for that condition. Intervention orders, useful to know. Your client might say to you, and many aggrieved do, and Maria would attest to this, that they just want the behaviours to stop.
To be changed.
They want the violence to end. They don't necessarily want a protection order. So they may say to you, I just want him to access assistance, help. We want him to do a men's behavioural change course. That's all well and good, but you must have the consent of the respondent. That's why it's so important for the respondent to attend court if that's possible, to access duty lawyer services, access social supports that are available at the court, and hopefully, in a perfect world, consent and participate in a men's behavioural change program and bring about true change to those behaviours and an end to the violence. So if you have any influence in terms of those decisions, that can be so important and so meaningful to persons who are experiencing violence in their lives. What does an order look like? I think we've actually got a...
Yeah, I think that we are pressing with time, so we're getting
Yeah,
close to our
I do apologise, there's so much to cover. But we certainly invite you to send us any queries, questions that you have in relation to the material. You'll have a copy of the material to go through at your leisure.
Presentation as well. Yeah.
And there is an image of a protection order that has been redacted so that you'll have an idea of what to expect, what it looks like. It also has another couple of pages attached in terms of the explanation of the order, which can be very useful when you're talking to your client about an order that's been made, just to have reference to the explanation as to what it means, what it's all about, possibly before you then go and access legal advice. Over to you guys.
We just encourage you to access the key resources, and we facilitate all the links available there. We also have the booklets available. It's a very important tool, not only for clients, but also for community workers to be aware and get a little bit more of understanding of how to support your client if it comes that she needs a little bit of support with this. So please access the resources available on the website that, that we have.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you to you both, Maria and Lindy, for all your specialist knowledge and practical tips as well for community workers, support workers. We know that our audience today, we've got community lawyers, we've got support workers, court assistance workers. We've got a whole lot of people that work right across the sector in supporting clients.
20 minutes questions, didn't we?
Yeah, there's a lot to cover. So I know that we've covered some of those questions off throughout the presentation. But what I would suggest is that if people have further questions that weren't answered today,
Any that we haven't covered that we could quickly do?
well, we could have a quick look, and there is, I'll let everybody know the email, the webinars at legalaid.qld.gov.au webinar, and we certainly, anything that isn't covered today that you would like to us to follow up on, please email there and we'll do our best to do that. I'll just have a look if there's any further questions here. Okay, I think we might go to highlighting there's a question about the next Safe and Together session, Lindy. So it might be a good opportunity just to talk about that. We know that we've done some, as part of Domestic Violence Prevention Month. Do you want to talk about that, Marina?
So there is an upcoming event, and we encourage you to register. Is on the 24th of June. Everyone can see the flyer. This is also available in our website. We encourage you to participate. This is a second part of another chat with the presenter David Mandel about from the Safe and Together Institute, and it will be very a great insight to participate in this
Absolutely, and you don't have to have completed the first program, that they are mutually exclusive, both fabulous programs. I've been very fortunate to participate in some of David Mandel's training previously, and it's well worth doing that training. He speaks about that trauma, that violence-informed approach, rather than the victim blaming that we so often hear perpetuated not only in the media but in society in general. So it really gives us some very practical tools for tackling that. So I strongly encourage that.
And I was fortunate to attend the first one too, and just the way he names behaviour and context and some really practical tools and even words and phrases.
Is the language that
workers can use.
A really good presenter.
So, so I'm mindful of our time. I'm mindful of how much we've got to share. I also want to acknowledge both of you and everything that you've shared this morning, from the practical tips for people, support workers when they're supporting clients to prepare with their paperwork, and some of the services that are available at the Safe Room at court, and how to get some extra assistance for high risk situations, and also the new funding and the specialist courts and some of the bigger picture sector-wide developments that are happening, which is pleasing to see.
Exciting area.
I think we'll keep watching this space, and certainly Legal Aid will keep communicating through our various channels in the sector as well. So please stay on to fill in your feedback survey. We're really grateful to hear of any feedback about how we can improve our webinars, and also any other future topics that we can cover. Thank you also to our interpreters today, and to everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda.
And thanks to everyone for joining us today. I know you're all busy, and
thank you all for your interest.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Best wishes. Bye-bye.